this a little fast.
Wainwright's back there.
Well, they need to change the battery in that low one.
I have to check that out. Call to order the meeting of the Monday, September 10th, 2018 Planning and Zoning meeting. Roll call, please.
Tony Gokenbach, Mark Hydrich.
Aye.
Mark Kleesner, Mark Piontek,
Here.
Tom Holdmeyer.
Here.
Sandy Lee.
Here.
John Borgman.
Here.
Chuck Watson.
Here.
Samantha Wacker.
Here.
Carolyn Witt. Sal Maniaci.
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the August 13th, 2018 meeting.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I have one error that needs to be corrected first, if I may.
Yes. Well, we'll see.
Okay. Under item 1, those present and absent, the mayor and I are both listed as being present and absent, and I believe we were present that night.
Well, you were here, but we felt you were absent.
So both of us felt
So we were
the
both
same.
absent.
Okay. So anyway,
Together.
that was the only thing I saw, sir.
So noted. There's a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Moving on to item number 3, case number 180903, Little Elm LLC. The applicant is requesting approval to rezone partial ID number 10-5-21. I don't need to read the rest of that. And 10-5-21-0 from R1A Single Family to C2 General Commercial. Sal?
Yes, so these two parcels are smaller parcels that are adjacent to the rezonings that you saw last month. Actually, I guess it was 2 months ago now. And they have, the same applicants came forward and requested to rezone these as well from R1A single-family residential to C2. So here is an updated zoning map. So you can see this does reflect the changes that were approved at the 2 months ago, whenever they rezoned that larger portion to the south, C2 general commercial, and then also annexed the portion further south that's in blue to R3 multifamily. So they're requesting to add these two parcels into the C2 general commercial as well. So if you have any questions of me, that's all I have.
Questions or comments of Sal by the board?
I will say both of these are fairly small and without access, and the current size, they're not buildable on their own, but it's, you know, obviously under the assumption that they'll be incorporated into the development to the south and west and be part of the parcel lines will be amended later. So,
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this?
My name's Kurt Understar, I represent Little Elm LLC, and I just like to apologize. We thought we had this all in our last packet, and it was so confusing that there were so many different parcel numbers, and when we filled out the application, we just missed this. When we actually had the surveyor start working on it, we realized there's a little sliver of ground that didn't get actually in those discussions with all the residents, so we're just trying to clean that up. So, sorry about that.
Anyone else like to say anything?
Did you want to say something?
Please come on up, introduce yourself.
I'm Larry Beck, and I live in the house basically right next to those two parcels. And we're just trying to understand, I guess, kind of what the plan is, since it's right adjacent to our house and backyard and zoned commercial. You know, we've always had kind of that quiet neighborhood there, so we're just trying to understand exactly kind of what the plan is. So.
Yep. Anyone else? Kurt, do you have anything you want to add to that?
We are, you know, like we talked about, we are trying to come up with a master plan that has commercial and mixed use residential and then actual residential to the back. We have no immediate plans at this time. We did meet with someone from St. Louis last week that is looking for an assisted living center site. So we are, we're marketing this property as a spot potentially for that. So, which is, it's a memory care, kind of like Hickory Creek type homestead for Hickory Creek type facility. So that would be something that we would entertain here too. It's a good spot right on top of the hill there.
Kurt, since you're here tonight, I'll ask the question. I noticed you're hitting a lot of rock, obviously, on that whole hillside there. You're not planning on taking that down or anything, or doing any kind of a cut there that would leave that house setting up higher, or trying to level that out?
We would have to slope to his property line. That, again, that's kind of a wedge piece up in there. We would have to work the grading plans with that and all that. I can't really comment on how that would turn out at this point, but no, we're not going to sheer bluff.
That's what I'm asking.
No, we're not going to
like we
sheer
have
bluff
with
next to
your-
our neighbor. We would have to
Okay.
slope that and grass that. So, no, we're not going to do that. We are taking the rock down on the Jasper Farm because we're trying to level that with the highway, but this is kind of a piece that's going to come right up to Mr. Beck's property, so we would slope it down. Further down, there might be a level spot made on that eastern portion.
Okay, thank you.
And I will just add that as a site plan is submitted, there will be, since this is a residential property that's adjoining to it, we'll require on that site plan a buffer yard and a landscape plan to show in between those two uses.
Any other questions, comments? Yep, come on.
I guess the only other question, and it came up during the last meeting, and I don't know that Mr. Understall has an answer to it yet, is access, if it would be through the existing commercial area, or if it would be the driveway next to us, or if you have an idea yet on that.
We are actually working on an access point off Old Pottery Road over by, between the Boers and Mr. Moore. We actually met with Mr. Moore and doing a little bit of trading on some slivers of ground to be able to get the road teed in off an Old Pottery. So that's going to be the one access, and then we plan on bringing it over to the Jasper Farm. So that piece that's next to you, we really don't see any use for that at this point. However, I can't speak for the fire department if they would want a third access in or something like that, but we don't really see a need for it if we can get it on two ends. So
Which one on the map there, which one is the Beck's house?
it is right there.
there.
Yeah,
Oh, so it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
So Kurt, just to clarify, the two pieces you're bringing in, it's not a specific development to those two pieces, it's just to bring that all as part of the residential?
Right. It was when we asked for the application a couple months ago, we just thought that all the boundaries were of all what we were trying to do, commercial to the north and residential to the back. And when we went through it all, those were, I guess, back when Narv Campschrader had it, he had that parceled off for some reason. They're kind of oddball shaped pieces. They weren't his house. They were in front of his house. So I don't know if he acquired it in piecemeal or if it was left over from the highway. It could have been very well left over from when, if you kind of look at north of 100 there, Old Pottery Road used to cross before the new 100 went in.
Right.
So I don't know if this land is left over from the northern pieces and Narv just purchased it because it was on his side. That's probably how it went down. I'm speculating there, but
Okay.
so again, we apologize that we didn't take care of that 2 months ago. We thought it was all in one application.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments by anyone? Any other questions, comments by the board? If not, entertain a motion.
So move.
Second?
First and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Moving on to item number 4, case number 180904. The applicant is requesting approval of the special use permit for a roadside stand food truck location behind Otis Campbell's. This is from last meeting, Sal?
Yes, so this was a resubmittal because it's on the same parcel, but this is had a different site plan. Remember last time we spoke that we were trying to come up with a solution if it was possible to have this on public property, whether it actually be a more traditional food truck on street or set up booth style on the parking lot. Well, in those discussions, even after it went to council, the applicant came back and has requested a change to actually be placed on private property on this site. So directly to the rear of Otis Campbell's there and accessing on Elm Street, there is a small area of green space and then also a small narrow driveway. It wouldn't be able to fit probably a large vehicle, but that's, if you're familiar with the area, that's often where there's a gator that's parked there. It has access to the sidewalk and to Elm Street right there. And so they're requesting to have a staging area in the back, I guess in the grassed area, and then the actual booth be placed on private property here. So it'd be a more traditional roadside stand like we'd see with produce, like up on Fifth Street that was approved, and then obviously at the other location at ZX. And when I say some more of a roadside stand, then an actual food truck. Again, here's the highlighted area they're requesting to use on private property. And then here's just a sketch of how the booth would fit in there. So you can see it is proposed off of the sidewalk. And it does have a note there that all the cooking is done behind the setup, and then this is just a stand. There was a letter submitted from the property owner stating in there, it does still have that 10 to 2, but quite honestly, I didn't add that as a condition of approval because now that this is on private property, it's completely their prerogative, the property owner's prerogative to control the hours. I didn't think it was our place to then add those extra conditions. So the only condition of approval I added was that it does stay, the actual stand stays at the edge of the sidewalk and not set up on the sidewalk. Obviously, if patrons are lining up there and possibly on the sidewalk, that's fine, but none of the actual equipment would be placed on public property. Staff saw no issue with this. We thought this was a good compromise and a good location for them to stay in the area they wanted. So we do recommend approval of this.
Questions or comments of sale by board?
Well, I have a couple, obviously.
Yep.
What do you mean, obviously? And you said, yeah. Of course.
First of all, when I went and looked at this, I guess one of my concerns is, and I'm not sure because I don't frequent Otis Campbell's, is if there is a second exit out the rear of that building. And if there is, this would block the exit pathway from that rear exit to the street. So there would be no way for them to exit the rear of the building and get to the street without walking
Sounds like
up a 2-foot concrete retaining wall
Now,
back
John,
by the parking lot.
there is two operating doors in the front.
I understand
on
that,
each
but I don't
side.
know what the exit requirements are, whether or not there's a second exit.
There is a
has-
second one out back as well.
There is?
Yeah, there's an access to the parking lot as well that I won't be blocking.
Because to get to the parking lot, to the right there, you mean, is that?
Directly behind it.
So you come out of the building and come this way?
No, sir. To the left.
Come out of the building and go this way?
That's where I would be.
Yes.
Right.
Towards like that red car.
Right here?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
the
the-
walkway then?
That's the exit out of the building?
I mean, if you're looking for a second fire or whatever,
Right.
yes.
As long as there's pedestrian access.
Well, I guess that's my concern. I wouldn't want to approve this until we have the fire marshal look at that and make sure that that exit requirement isn't going to be affected by a stand. The way it looks to me, there's the sidewalk that runs right alongside the building is the exit out of that lower level, and I think that's the level that Otis Campbell's is on from Front Street.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a back door that's only like employee only that they let people out.
So the exit that you're talking about is on the second level?
No, I mean, that's how they would get out if they went out the back door.
If they went out the back door?
There is an employee exit on the ground level here that touches the, I think.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like underneath the back.
Yes.
Okay, underneath
'Cause
that.
this is
back-
this is a bridgeway that goes to the second level apartment. And then
Okay.
there is an access out to this back door.
So it acts, the lower level would access out into that little courtyard?
Yes.
Green space there?
Mhm. And then there's two ways out of that courtyard. One temporarily now is blocked by a UTV where I would
Okay,
set up
that's
a
where you
stand.
would set up.
And then
okay.
the other one is right there where he's pointing.
Because I didn't see any kind of steps or anything at that retaining wall that's there.
Yeah, I confess I didn't get out of my car and like walk in the sunken part, but I had the same concern that John did of how do you get
I
out?
think there probably is no
along the
steps.
parking lot, and I didn't see any steps there today when I looked at that.
I haven't looked either. I didn't know that was actually a wall. I thought that was kind of sloped down.
It's kind of a sunken area.
Yeah, John, those steps are inside more. You go down, yeah.
Yeah, and they go here.
Okay,
That's right. And that's my concern. So I wouldn't have a problem proving it with a contingency.
Is that the
fire
approval from the
marshal-
fire marshal?
Yes.
Might have to put some steps there to get in.
There may have to be some steps there in order to, steps and handrail in order to accommodate that.
It's blocked now, so.
And I don't know how much you're gonna have set up back in that green space, you know, but that would have to be, exit way would have to be maintained so that if in the event that something happened on Front Street and the people needed to get out, that's why you have the second exit to get out the rear. And that pathway needs to be to a public way, which is either the street or a public sidewalk.
Okay.
Well, and this is technically a public alley in the
Right,
rear,
okay.
so you're
Well,
right. If they can
right,
get some
just
connection.
some way to get out of the
Some way
building
to, some way to get to that public way, yes.
and not be, you know, stuck in a, you know, sunken courtyard.
Right. My only other concern, I guess, and it's really not a big deal, it's being more nitpicky maybe, is the location is right underneath all the electrical service that runs to the building. As long as you're careful, you know, and you're not,
There's, all of the warmers and everything like that is going to be down the
behind
wall
that.
from that.
Right. I know, just when setting up a tent, you know.
Oh, yeah,
or-
sure, I
I
understand.
just wouldn't want to see somebody with a pole or something not thinking, get,
That'd be me.
well, hopefully not. But anyway, those are the only two concerns I had.
All right. And John, I do just want to question, so, and maybe if this fire marshal still may have to
My turn.
specify, but if, you know, the tables are set up in an L shape here and there's still pedestrian access, you know, this way.
Well,
there's-
that was, my only thought with that was just to keep people from roaming back there.
Yeah.
You know, if I have to keep an opening there to, you know, work with the fire
There just
marshal, then
needs
that's
to be
fine.
some type of access.
Some type of access is
Okay.
all that needs.
As long
to
as
be
it's
made.
verified by, okay.
Right.
How do we go about that?
We can have the fire chief and/or the assistant fire chief go and look at it, so. So what we'll do is we can have that condition of approval be added to the ordinance, still stay on the same schedule to council, and then before we actually issue the permit, we'll have the fire chief go take a look at it.
And I'll, next time I see him, which will be probably here in a few days, I'll mention to both of them and,
All right. Well, I should see him Thursday, someone from the
Okay.
fire department at site plan,
okay.
so.
Any other questions or comments, board members?
I'm glad you found a spot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's been a struggle.
Yeah.
that's actually a better spot than,
Oh, just eliminate the giant trailer I bought. I'll use it elsewhere though, work out.
keep it at the gas station.
Any other questions? Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this? If there's nothing further, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with the contingency that exit requirements are met out of the rear exit, second exit for Otis Campbell's.
Second.
First and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. When's the city council meeting?
Yeah, Thursday, the 20th.
Thursday.
Yep.
Thursday, 20th. All right, moving on to item number 5, case number 180905. Unco Development Corporation, the applicant is requesting approval of Stonecrest Plat 14. Sal?
Yes, so this is the next phase of Stonecrest, the one that we've all been patiently waiting on to get the connection to Fernacey Drive. So this next phase is 34 single-family lots. It does meet the zoning, the existing zoning that's on site. So this is the zoning map we have online. Now, I will point out that this is not actually accurate because that property is split zoned. If you remember, they had a portion of it rezoned to R1D, single-family residential, which matches this striped area on Windcrest and Earthcrest here. The reason it doesn't show that is just our mapping has to follow property lines, and since it wasn't subdivided yet, we weren't able to show that split. But this is the area that was approved I believe last year already, this R1D. And so I just wanted to point that out because the preliminary plat here that is submitted meets that layout that they showed in the rezoning. So it's hard to tell, but they do have a dotted line going down the center line of the street following that zoning barrier, and everything on this northeastern side is R1A, and then on the interior here is the R1D, which this is where you'll see the smaller lots. So they do have the appropriate easements, the utility easements that are shown. The biggest thing we were looking for, it was a condition of approval in Plat 11 that there had to be a connection, another entrance to the subdivision to keep from additional traffic being put onto Earthcrest. And so you can see with the connection to Vernacey Drive there, they're having that, that new access into the subdivision. And it's one that we are anticipating would be a higher traffic volume because it will be the main connection to the commercial shopping center. I do want to point out it is I have it here, it is number 12 on our master plan list of connections. And I just wanted to show this map is because we've had this adopted since 2013 to show our proposed new street connections as the city develops. And if you remember, whenever this was all approved, we actually made an amendment to move this number 11 further north for a couple of reasons. One, this portion where there's a valley is much, it's shallower there, but it's longer. And so it'd actually be more expensive to put a bridge in here than it would be here. We actually have some right-of-way already acquired from when a Victorian Manor was developed, and this is a shorter valley here for us to get a bridge in. On top of that, we think with all the developments going on here and for the traffic that we'd have from Lake Washington, it'd probably be smarter to have, if people are trying to get to the shopping center, this connection come in through here rather through English Crest, and they make multiple turns throughout a single-family subdivision. So this number 11 is moved up, and then they do show that number 12 is what's the connection they're proposed in this plat. And I just wanted to point out that number 11 we moved up because that is one of our conditions of approval. I kind of went through that quickly, but we really have no issues with the way this is laid out. It meets the preliminary plan that we saw a while back, kind of showing how this connection was probably going to be made. It meets the zoning requirements. They also show the larger cul-de-sac that was required. This street here, Mooncrest, is narrower, but they're meeting that new section of the code where it's 30 feet wide with less than 10 homes and then parking on one side, and the rest of the streets do meet the 35-foot requirement. And then if you see here, the only extra, these first two conditions of approval are pretty standard. We add with every preliminary plat that the fire hydrants must be in place with the fire and subdivision code. The reason we add that is because there was that amendment when we did the March 2017 update that they have to place the intersection and then measure it out from there rather than just placed as the street goes on. And then obviously the capability of existing stormwater retention must be verified. They've been doing this as they go forward with Stonecrest. It's just something that since there is not area designated on this plat for stormwater, we just like to point that out in the preliminary plat so that they know there has to be, if they decide to take care of it on site, then they have to come back with a revised plat. And lastly, the only more unique condition is that a four-way intersection must be platted in construction where Earthcrest Drive and Northcrest Drive meet on the plat, and that would have the four-way being Vernacey Drive and Northcrest terminating at that intersection. And that is it right here is what I'm having the condition of approval pertaining to. The reason being, since we're moving that connection 11 for the master plan further north, and we'll have to work with the developer as they lay out this property to the west, but we anticipate this being the main intersection as this goes west to Rabbit Trail.
Okay,
and so that way,
that's where it's going to go west to the.
yes, to the proposed bridge on Rabbit Trail.
That's what I was curious about.
So this is where we are proposing the four-way intersection, and that way, as you come off of Vernacey Drive, you can have a stop sign there, terminate Vernacey Drive, and have this on the other side of the intersection be Northcrest.
So Sal, when are you proposing the number 11 going out on the Rabbit Trail?
Well, it kind of depends on the development to the property to the west. Because we can request funds through a grant process, whether it be Franklin County Special Road District or East-West Gateway, or whether we build up our transportation funds for maybe 3 years. We do have a cost estimate. We're anticipating about $1 million for that bridge. on Rabbit Trail, but we don't want to designate those funds and construct that bridge until there's a development that we're ready to connect to. We don't want to have a bridge to nowhere. And so if this property to the west is ready to be developed sooner rather than later, then we'll probably get in the next 3 years a budget requested for that bridge and have that connection made. But if there's nothing planned on here, it will probably wait. So we're kind of trying to see how the development happens further west.
Well, we better get a strategic plan for 100 Rabbit Trail before we put any bridges in.
Well, this
We've been battling this for years, and that's just a clutter mess.
Well, I will say that the anticipation is that this bridge would substantially help that situation, because you'd have all these, let me zoom out here. Well, I don't know if I have one that's further. All of these homes here on Lake Washington, Winona, and then all this new development, right now they're going to Rabbit Trail and they're going down this way to get to Phoenix Center. If we have this connection right here, it's logical that all this new development and a lot of Lake Washington is going to come this way, and it's actually going to alleviate the traffic issues we have at Rabbit Trail. And that's why the engineering department has put this as a priority, where we said that if we want to start looking to get the funds to put this bridge in sooner rather than later, we're more than happy to get that schedule rolling. You know, again, it's about $1 million. We have an overlay project that the city engineer John Nail just can get much more into details on, where we could delay some overlays to then pay for a bridge elsewhere. We've talked about that, just one funding source, whether going to East West Gateway. There's a lot of different ideas we could to request funding for this, but the whole idea is we don't want to get that into a budget process right now until we know what we're going to be connecting to. So, and quite frankly, if it helps the Understalls develop this area with that connection, then we can try and get something a little bit more fast-tracked. But yes, to answer your question, that we do think that'll alleviate the situation at Rabbit Trail in 100.
Somewhat,
Yes.
till we can go all the way up. And we'll have some going up over the hill maybe too.
Mm-hmm.
Weber Estates.
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully soon. We're busting at the seams down there,
Yep.
major.
I have one other question, Sal, and maybe, I don't know if you can answer it or not, but the intersection of Vernacey Drive and Earth Crest. Vernacey Drive would actually start at the middle of that intersection and go north, is that correct?
Right. So right now, they do have it right here terminating at the property line.
Right.
The only reason we have an issue with that, and we spoke with emergency services,
Right.
is you need to have an actual delineation between street names. You can't just have it switch over in the middle while you're driving without an actual stop or without an intersection. And so we are proposing that this be a four-way intersection, not only because it matches our master plan, but because it's easier to create a range for the emergency services.
Okay,
So-
then that brings up a question. We had an incident with outside of town a couple weeks ago where the house on that corner, for instance, in that corner lot 232, where the house was addressed and faced Vernacey Drive, but was addressed because the driveway came off of Earthcrest. So it was really confusing to find the house, and I didn't know how we look at corner lots for addressing.
So whenever we get a plat like this and after it's approved, we come up with an addressing system, and any corner lot that has the capability of having a driver on either one, we give it two addresses, and we put a note in there, whatever Vernacey Drive, in this situation, Vernacey Drive, or this would be Earthcrest. And then whenever the building permit comes in and they show where the driveway is going to be, that's when we designate what address it's going to be.
So you address off the driveway, not the way the house faces?
Correct.
Okay.
Where the driveway is connected. So we had that issue with where Weber Heights just went, the overlook of Weber Farms. Originally, they were none of those driveways were supposed to go off of Weber Heights Drive, and so they were all addressed off the side streets. Well, when a building permit came in and had a driveway off of Weber Heights, we had to go back and readdress it.
Okay.
Because we go off of where the driveway is.
And one other question, Vernacey Drive and Northcrest, are they the same width streets?
I think Vernacey is actually a little bit wider.
That's what I was wondering, if there would be a reduction in street
Yeah,
width there.
they're gonna have, and I'll let Kurt speak to this, they're proposing a median here, and so I don't know if they're going to widen the entrance at its point, but the minimum driving width has to be 35 feet. If there is a median, we can work with them, and just like we've done their other entrances where it's, I think it's 26 feet on
Okay.
the interior, so.
Thank you.
Can you pull up that aerial of the park?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You see that road going into the tennis courts? That currently doesn't have a name on it. And what we're proposing is that Vernacey Drive stop right there at that intersection to the park, because we want to put in a grand entrance into Stonecrest. We feel that once we connect, this is going to be the major entrance. We've already got 2 stone entrances. So we're going to do a lot of brick and stone entrance, a lot of landscape and bushes. Our street is going to be built out of concrete. Vernacey Drive is built out of asphalt. So there's a clear delineation that you know you're in Stonecrest. Our concerns are twofold. One, there's a street out there right now that does not have a name, and you say, well, if there was an accident, you could say you're at Phoenix Park. Yes, but however, since you've connected the trail to Lake Washington, somebody could have an issue, you know, emergency, something like that. They wouldn't even know where they're at. So we feel the city, A, should name that street, and B, let us put our stone entrance at our land property line, so when you drive in, you know you're in Stonecrest. We feel it could be confusing that you got a block of Vernacey Drive inside of Stonecrest. Everybody, we met with the staff, everybody agreed, they liked the idea that we've kept synonymous. Every road in there is either something crest, it's Wind Crest, Pine Crest, Maple Crest, Rock Crest, Earth Crest, Fire Crest. So we want to keep that same synonymous markings on our streets in our subdivision. So we're proposing a concrete street, stone pillars, well, we want to do it at the property line, and we think the change should happen at that unnamed road intersection.
So, and I just will point, the proposal that Kurt's saying now, that doesn't actually change anything you see on the plat. It would still be laid out this way.
In fact, John, I propose to have you and the chief come out there, because I think if you see it,
Well,
it'll make
this
sense.
This is the first I heard of it.
Yeah,
so-
I'd like you and the Councilman Haldrich, you know, it's your ward. It's just, once we connect, I think there's gonna be some confusion where if you run Vernacey Drive into the subdivision, you're gonna be going, well, you know, so we feel like right there where that park is, and I looked at that, you know, John Nilge's comment, I think, was, well, that's a park street, it doesn't need to be named. I feel that there's so many citizens now using Phoenix Park. You got pedestrians coming in off Lake Washington Trail, and that road's actually longer than the little stub piece we're building. So, and thirdly, which is the other side of the coin, the more streets you name, the more grant money you can get because you're maintaining more streets. So why wouldn't you name it and claim it as a city street? So that's what we're proposing. And we will have a clear delineation because we're building ours to concrete to the line.
And I wouldn't be opposed to that setup at that, under those conditions, if there were some guarantees that that's what we were going to be getting.
All right. Well, and here's what we talked about this at site plan, but I don't think, the way I see it, from what he's proposing, we don't need to change anything in our recommendation, because at the end of the day, all it does is, are we going to put, at this intersection, is this going to say, the street sign, the green street sign, is it going to say Vernacey Drive, or is it going to say Northcrest Drive, and then it's just going to be known that Northcrest Drive changes right here? The aerial's a little bit easier.
Okay, yeah.
And so that, to me, that is a decision by the traffic committee when they put up street signs, because I know the developer purchases the street signs and they put them in, but the traffic committee ultimately makes those recommendations. What Kurt's proposing doesn't actually change the layout of the plat at all.
Sal, can you put Stonecrest in there so we can see it with the park and the street? Like with your fancy audiovisual?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
No.
Fair enough.
Because this is all screenshots on PowerPoint, so I don't have any way to copy
He
it
let you
over.
down, didn't he?
Well,
Yeah.
you know, I'm just,
Yeah.
the technology should work when it's
Yeah.
supposed to work.
Anyway, well, to
Hamlin had those fancy earth movers and stuff like that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah. Well, to Sal's point, it's not. It doesn't really affect the guts of the
Right.
plat, and but
Right.
but I would like to meet with fire personnel, council, and show you what we're wanting to do there. We're wanting to do a big grandiose entrance, and we think the name change should be right there, and then that road should be named something.
And I would agree with
Because
the
if
proposal that way. I
there's
think
so
that
many
makes the
pedestrians
most
walking
sense.
that trail, if a visitor came in Stonecrest for the weekend, 70-year-old guy had a heart attack, fell down, 911, where you at? Well, I'm on this street, where am I? He doesn't know he's in Phoenix Park. But if he can look up and see a street sign right there at that intersection, he knows where, he can at least call and say, hey, that's where I'm at.
So I think really it's going to be up to the traffic committee and emergency services what they want these streets to be named. Because at the end of the day, that's not shown on the plat. And so where the street signs are, I mean, it says on here Vernacey Drive and Northcrest Drive. We don't make people actually designate, well, this is where it begins and ends. It's just that's how typically we've done it because it's easier to show it terminates at a intersection.
Other than what you've got for a recommendation on your
Right.
sheet here is the only,
Correct. We don't need,
Thing that's
yeah.
correct.
So we
Now,
can
we're
drop
going to need
that
a
off.
revised plat anyway because we want to show the stub to the west.
Right.
But
Who's paying for that stuff?
you are.
Thought.
No. We'll get you a bridge whenever you want to get to Rabbit Trail.
Oh, what a deal.
Maybe you could just name the street and the park, Kurt.
Yeah.
Phoenix Park Drive.
So Sal, did Chief Frankenberg know about this when he
Yeah.
wrote the letter?
And I will say the recommendation was to have the street name change at some type of delineation, some type of intersection. I'll be honest, when we first got brought up was we could do a roundabout if we wanted, but that would take up too much space away from the lots. Because that would actually give, where you put it on some of this property further north or actually do it at the intersection, you could give a delineation.
I'll sell you some land for roundabout. I'm all for a roundabout.
Yeah.
But you got to build a roundabout.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, again, we had a long discussion with this site plan. It kind of came down to, look, at the end of the day, it doesn't change the plat. Council has the say of street names at the end of the day. So when Kurt's finishing this up and he puts Northcrest here because he doesn't want this to say Vernacey Drive, a year later, if council decides it's not safe and there's an issue, a quick ordinance can change what that street name says.
Well, and again, our concern is just that the Vernacey Drive is the commercial development, and then Stonecrest starts with all crest words. It's a
Right.
grand monument, it's a
well, that's
concrete
just
street,
it.
it's an asphalt.
You've got your grand entrance and stuff
Right.
like that.
You-
to
you
have
know
to
exactly-
see inside of
Right.
that.
You know
space
exactly where
just
the
doesn't-
delineation.
Just doesn't seem right.
Right.
Either.
I think what we were getting at from staff's point of view in emergency services, yes, in this specific situation, there is you're going to have a monument, you're going to have, well.
Yeah, and I don't think-
The material could change over years when you're going, but you're going to have a monument, you're going to know you're going into a subdivision, but we didn't want to set a precedent where people could just have streets. I mean, Windy Hills is the worst situation, the worst example we could show, where you're going around that turn and all of a sudden the street name just changes with no indication that it actually changes. And so that's what we're trying to prevent, trying to stop that precedent from happening. Again, that doesn't necessarily affect the plat. It's just something that whenever you're naming the streets.
But what he's basically proposing, you're going to the previous intersection coming into it and stuff too. So you're still going to, at the park there, you're going still to a somewhat, as you're.
We could put a street sign here that says Northcrest Drive. That is correct.
You know, that basically that is another intersection right there, that's outside of his and stuff too.
Right.
Well, we talked about we wouldn't propose a roundabout this far north because this is, I mean, it's a highly utilized park, but it's not high enough traffic to, your roundabout needs to be, your intersection needs to be built for actually through traffic. I mean, this is a dead end. This goes to a parking lot. This actually does have an address. This Phoenix Park is address off Vernacey Drive.
Well, and if we followed the addressing to go to the property line, then you wouldn't have would eliminate the possibility of having one house in that subdivision with a Vernacey address.
If they changed the driveway, that is correct.
Which would
Because
be,
if
I
the
think-
person who bought this lot decided to put their driveway here,
Yeah, then I
now,
think that would be
with a
more
median there, that would be very, I mean,
You would
of a
have-
poor
because
choice,
that would-
but.
That would be the only residential house you would have
With a Vernacci.
with a
address.
Vernacci address.
That's correct. I mean,
And I think that would be more confusing for emergency services than, I'll talk to Chief Franken.
Like I said, I'll be glad to meet you out there.
Yeah, I'll talk.
Feel free to take a look at it, but you see that Park Road, there's an intersection there, and then it's concrete meeting asphalt, so it's a clear delineation. And then we proposed, brick monuments and pillars on both sides.
Right.
So you're okay with the other recommendations on stormwater? and-
Don't ask
Whether I'm
that.
okay with the west connection or not, I'm gonna somehow think.
Well, I just
put
wanted
it
to make
in.
sure.
Oh, we're all kidding aside, we just don't, we didn't show it because we don't have any plans to the west
Right.
right now. But we're willing to work with the city on a connection at some time. We just want to get this done, and then lots keep selling, then we'll keep going west, so.
And then I can just change, for what it sounds like the discussion, I'll just change the third condition that a four-way intersection must be platted and constructed where Earthcrest Drive and Northcrest Drive meet on the plat. Just leave it at that. I won't have to give any specifics on where the other streets terminate.
Yep.
That can all be decided by emergency services at a later date.
In addressing.
Correct.
Anyone else that would like to speak in the audience? If not, any further discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
First and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any other business?
Yeah, well, and just, I asked Ben Ziegler to stick around, because we're going to be having another code amendment anyway, because one, the food truck item isn't dead, and we don't want to kick that can down the road just because this, or applicant found a better location. We're still looking at a licensing situation where we designate areas where they're approved, and then you just have to get your license renewed annually. But since we'd like to package, I didn't want to get any public hearings on that because we like to package our code amendments, so we're not doing one every month. Tonight we had a meeting, the Board of Adjustment meeting, where there was 2 requests for electronic message display board signs that were larger than what the code requires. Prior to March 2017, we did not have specifics on electronic message display boards. Those LED signs, we didn't have size requirements, transition requirements, hold times, any of that. If you remember, we had a long discussion. We went through the code amendment on regulating that. The discussion primarily stayed towards, should we have a hold time, should we have lighting requirements, and the actual transitions. And I know Ben and his team kind of went through what their concerns were, and I think there was just so much discussion on the other issues with what we were trying to regulate. We didn't actually address if there was an issue with the size requirement. Our consultant recommended 18 square feet, and when we addressed the other concerns, we didn't really discuss that, and we just went with it. We accepted the consultant's recommendation. 18 square feet is substantially smaller than any LED message display sign that we have in the city limits. I do think our prior code was dangerous because we didn't have a threshold. You could have made your entire 250 square foot sign LED. I know that would be crazy expensive, but the code would have allowed it if someone wanted to do it. So we do need a threshold. I will say, I think from just a very basic recommendation, I think 18 square feet is too small. I'd like to see what our consultant gave us was recommendations from communities in St. Louis County that have much higher, much stricter regulations on that. 18 square feet is a fairly small LED sign. And maybe the P&Z and council will decide that that's, they agree with that we need smaller signs, smaller LED signs. But what it came up with the Board of Adjustment tonight, we're going to see almost every single LED sign that gets submitted be going to the Board of Adjustment. And so both of them were denied under the recommendation from Board of Adjustment that this be reopened and discussed at P&Z and council if we should increase that 18 square feet to a larger number, and then address any other concerns with our LED signs that may have been overlooked when we were doing the code amendment as a whole. I will concede that I think that kind of fell through the cracks because when we were going through that, like I said, we were focusing so much on the other regulations that I think we didn't even talk about the 18 square feet publicly. I think we just decided we didn't want to do the hold times, and we found it was something we were okay with, the dusk to dawn transition on the lighting, that we didn't even talk about the square footage itself. So if you go around town, I mean, Ben would probably know more than I would because he did most of the signs. I think there's only one that we know of in the city limits that's 18 square feet, and it's the one up on Fifth Street. And the rest are all much larger. So since he was here for the other meeting and he had some proposed amendments of what we could do to clean that up, I asked him to stay, and we can open the discussion back up with this commission.
Ben?
Thank you, guys. Ben Ziegler, Ziegler Signs. Back in, I believe it was June 28th of 16, we submitted the proposed sign code to our International Sign Association Board, who basically helps municipalities all over the U.S., internationally and U.S., to help develop a fair and economical sign code that works for both parties. And they've been doing that religiously for many, many years. And with the new Supreme Court case of Gilbert versus Reed, which was a 2016 Supreme Court case that pretty much made every sign code in the U.S. illegal in some form of sense, and opened up to so many different litigations that could be held because of the way this one court case enabled. So ISA has been on overtime helping educate planners throughout the U.S. and speaking at seminars and helping that. And when we heard about the sign code, this was all going on, and it was a very hot topic. So we sent, David sent a letter, went through the code, which they do is they read through it and say, hey, this looks good, and makes their recommendations. And I know that they had a consultant, which it was a huge packet. I mean, the page was 400 or 500 pages, ridiculous. But some of the letters and I stood here in front of the council and went over this in detail. I know we got focused on the hold times, but the letter that was submitted, and there was 4 things that we primarily went over, and of those 4 things, only one of them really was, where I'm going to read back here. It says the proposed 60-second hold time also greatly exceeds the controls that Missouri Department of Transportation MoDOT established on-premise digital billboards. If the state allows 672-foot billboard to change every 10 seconds, how can the on-premise electronic display show a complete message without sequencing every 60 seconds in only 18 square feet? Question mark. With the 45-mile-per-hour speed limit on Missouri 100, it is nearly impossible to display enough characters large enough to be read at a safe distance. Just displaying Citizens Bank with an adequate letter height would fill more than 22 square feet distance. Not counting the negative space of the board in the words, the bank would be unable to display their mortgage rates, hours of service, and other financial services in their permitted space in a frame. And we discussed that it's too small. It would never be able to be utilized. And the average size sign in Washington, this message board, is probably 45 to 48 square feet. I mean, most of them are 50 square feet or 32, somewhere in that, in the average, because that is the good legible read time. It's not to get the most out of it. I mean, like Sal said, I could put a 250 square foot message board up, but why? It's not needed. It's based upon readability, distance, speed limits. So putting a set square footage is really hard because, transition, corners, angles, street, all that stuff goes into the fact of what size the board should be, what good reading distance should be. So if I know of one municipality in St. Louis that has a maximum, and it's 50 square feet, which that's fine for 80%, but that 20% that wants a bigger sign and it's way off the road and you can't read it from there, it needs to be bigger. I mean, so it's one of those things, it's a gray area. So, but having it at 18, I honestly feel, and this is a mistake, and because when I sat here in this council, the square footage we talked about Citizens Bank, I remember Jeff bringing up is like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Leave it to the square footage allowance that we had. And then the lighting hold time was taken out, which there were 1 and 2, and then 3 was the square footage. And that one, I don't know if it got mixed or some of the other things. And we're just seeing a lot of things that, I mean, this is really probably the first message board that's been brought to Washington since 16 or 17 when it was adopted. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're not that common. People, I mean, the economy's starting to move a little bit, but people just aren't going to spend that kind of money. But we have a new multi-tenant development happening, and we have Mr. Wilson's right there by the hospital with the insurance stuff that he's trying to push out the information to for Mercy and stuff like that. So those two are needed. You know, most people, like I said, haven't. And I know here lately some people have, I don't want to say abused the code, but have, you know, just not been real tasteful with, you know, signs up. But fortunately, the code is what it is, and I don't want to see people turn this sign code into a, well, if I can't have this, then I'm going to go do this. I don't want to see that happen, because then it makes our town look, you know, trashy, and then nobody gets anything they want. So I would really like to see however we can do to amend this code for the square footage allowance and the height allowance. I don't know where the height came into play, but really the height limitations is what it's doing is actually opposite of what I think they're trying to do. They wanted to keep it low because they figured that would be less dangerous. Well, it's actually more, because people are focused looking down instead of looking up and ahead for the 3 or 4 seconds. So by bringing that down low, you're bringing people's vision down to where they shouldn't be, and I don't know where that came from. And everybody I've talked to in the industry, there's no height limitations on anything. I don't know where that came from. So I would like to see that, you know, if we can get, I'd just like to see the code get to be where it really needs to be for some of these, you know, lighting agreements. We have a very nice nighttime, excuse me, nighttime brightness level recommendation that's been sent out to all the municipalities over the United States. It was created for a standardization in lighting for this same type of scenario. And I think what the consultant had put in there is like 300 nits and 5,000 nits, which there's not one sign in this town that would be legal. I mean, 300 nits at night, I mean, that's not even, I mean, the most signs are 8 to 10,000 nits during the day. So cutting them in half, you wouldn't do it anyway. You wouldn't be able, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. I don't know where they got those numbers from, but that's not the way you measure that, and there's no way to regulate that. This is a good way to regulate that based upon different aspects of where they're located and lighting ambiances, things like that. So this is more of a manageable way to track and control that, where I think what's in the code now, there's really, nobody's going to ever be able to control it. Nobody's going to ever regulate it. There's no way to do it properly. So I think that's setting us up for a code that's not real, you know, nobody's going to mandate it, so why even have it? It's kind of the attitude I heard tonight with some of the people. So whatever we can do to try to get this accomplished, I would really appreciate it, because it is going to be one of these things that come up. I mean, I've done variance meetings. Every sign is going to become a variance because he has it, she has it, the city has it. Why can't I have it? All because of I feel, a missed section. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, any questions?
Yeah, I think it's something we definitely need to look at. What I would like is if we could have this information and get it to us earlier than a few days before the meeting, so, because it looks like there's quite a bit of reading there, and that way we can kind of educate ourselves and get familiar with the terms of nits or nats or whatever you said, so that we
Nits and
can
lumens,
be you know, be more educated to discuss it then at our next meeting.
I
if
get
that's
with
possible.
to kind of put that together, and because I think there are a couple, there's one way we could just have LED signs, not have a maximum on the signs, it's the LED portion, just said they have to match what the rest of the sign is. 250 square feet on the sign, if they wanted to spend the money to do that, and we could cross that out. I would think we still need some type of threshold, that whether it's a percentage of the sign. So right now, I mean, what if you did 50% of the sign? You know, your LED cannot be more than 50% of the sign in its entirety.
You know, I've seen it, like I said, we are licensed in probably 600 municipalities, and we go through so many sign codes. I mean, we have a lady that just does sign permitting. And I've sat through so many different municipality meetings of the same sort. What I see that works a lot is municipalities that want to reduce big signs. You know, everybody, right now, the way the code reads, anywhere corridor 47 and 100, I could put a 50-foot sign, 250 square feet. That's a big sign. Not huge, but a big sign, you know, based upon the location. If it's right on the highway, it's big. When it's 100 feet off the highway, it's not that big. And so that determines a lot of things. What I would say is I wouldn't want to limit what you can put on a sign, because you have to give them a square footage, whether they want to put LED or they want to put tenant, but maybe reduce that square footage allowance from the 250, even on the corridor ones, but maybe address a different When Darren and I did this originally, where the 250 came from was when Phoenix Center was developing. When we have to have a new sign code because we didn't have anything. And you want a big development like that, they have to have big tenant signs. And those guys are actually probably bigger than 250 square foot. But we don't have those coming to town every week, where we're having these smaller ones come in town. And just as Advanced Auto and this other company that did, I would have never done that, but that's me. Some other company came in and they don't care, and they threw it up, but it was legal. And unfortunately, I have to deal with it every day. You don't realize how many emails I've gotten, phone calls I've gotten. I had nothing to do with it. I'm dealing with it. And I mean, I talked to the guy that did it. I said, there was he just installed it for somebody else that doesn't care. Some company out of Illinois. They don't care about municipalities or homes or people's towns. They just, hey, bang buck and boom, we're done. And that's not what it's about. Like this whole thing with Jeff, we could put a 250 square foot, 50-foot sign up there. But instead, I think we should put a 13-foot sign up that's 69 square feet. But it needs just a message board so he doesn't have to have such a big sign to put all that information on. And that's where people are utilizing this digital technology. It's not going to go away. I mean, we all have digital technology, and that's the future of where everything's going. We just have to find a happy medium to keep the cities from looking like Las Vegas, but yet give the consumers and the people, what they have. The lighting is huge, the way that it happens. I just think we need to probably sit down and come up with a classification of square footage, mainly on the 47 and 44 corridor, because side streets and there's also, there's some terminology in that code that I noticed I think is a typo. It was on some of the stuff which we want to look at, because it's calling out same streets in two different heights of allowance, but it's also corridor streets and highways, and it had like 3 ands, which I just think it's a typo, but it's just, I want to double check that. But the smaller streets, they don't need that big of signs. I mean, because they're right there. They're on a 25 or 40 mile an hour speed limit. It doesn't need to be huge. I know this is like I'm shooting myself in the foot, but I don't want gaudy city either. And, I'm all about, helping to make this work. And I thought we had done this once. That's why, like I said, I don't read the sign code. When I sat here at the council and we talked about everything, as far as I was concerned, we addressed all the situations that were some harm. There's a couple things in here that ISA had made some recommendations that could be a legal issue because of this Reed thing. And the last thing I want to do is have somebody know about that and then come in and say, well, I want to take this to, I don't want to deal with all that stuff. That's nobody wins on that. So whatever we can do to get this changed, and preferably fast track it as possible, because we tried to do the variance so we could at least get these 2 customers, because they're going to be open before their signs are ever. And unfortunately, that's a hardship for both of them, as they were utilizing these to help with their businesses and change. So I don't know how long this process would take, but.
Well, we can get a recommendation at the next P&Z meeting, but, that's what I was going to work with you on, and then hopefully I was going to bundle the other proposed amendment as well.
Well, and like Ben was saying, there's a gentleman,
David Hickey, he's the Vice President of Internal Affairs and Regulations with ISA from DC. He'll fly up here, or one of his people will fly up here and sit down and help you build this. They'll fly here. Doesn't cost the city anything. Doesn't cost me anything. That's what they do. That's part of the association, and what we are part of is they're here to help. They're not here to say, mandate this, what you do. They actually speak at, what's the AIA or AICP conferences on how to help people just like yourself build these codes that doesn't cause the heartaches and headaches and variances and meetings and frustrations. It's a good balanced effort, and they've done a very good job. The problem is it's all new to everybody. Change and a lot of people don't know the laws and regs. I would have never thought a little yard sign would end up to a Supreme Court case that changes the whole sign codes and just terminology for legal senses. It's printed out, but it's like a 600-page document. So there's a link that Sal's got, but it's interesting reading because it's education to me, and things change every day. Chicago had a moratorium on LEDs. No more. Now Chicago has the biggest open LED tolerance and sign codes because people showed the city, and there was basically just a few people that didn't like them, but they basically showed them how this affected their community and their city, and now it's a thriving. It looks beautiful, and it's driven the LED market to a different world. So it's a big change. So whatever we can do.
yeah, so if we can take advantage of some free advice, or, you know, Mayor, maybe we need to jump on board on that.
Has there-
Ben, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. No,
No,
go ahead.
I had a question. You said ISA is the organization you're going on. Are they, tell me more, are they a lobbyist organization for your industry, or what
They
exactly?
do, I mean, they are in DC, which is the association capital of everything, and I actually serve on the board of ISA, which is it's a blessing. It's a very large organization. They help, there's a few organizations built into it. NESREC, which used to be for national, they work with a lot of the college campuses and have doing a lot of the research studies, so a lot of the traffic safety and all this stuff. They use grants and large money, you know, to develop that data that's free to use for any association or anybody to use, which has actually all been updated with the Sign Research Foundation, and it's online stuff. I sent Sal a few links to it just today. It's easy read stuff that I mean, that whole town versus, or that Reed versus Gilbert, I mean, this was a 400-page document that they put into a 4-page simplified version so you can really get the gist of it and not have to read a 400-page document. There's all sorts of analysis and stuff like this that's free to anybody can grab it online, but it's just knowing that it's out there. And a lot of the, you know, David Hickey, they don't do as much lobbying as they used to, because a lot of the stuff they've turned from this lobbyist factor to this, hey, we're here to help. You know, they're actually serving on some of these committees with municipalities and planners to help educate them. We've brought them to our shows. All these planners are coming to our shows and understanding the importance of what a good sign code and what good, you know, sign design can bring to a town. You know, the downtown groups, the chamber groups, all these things. They're realizing that, you know, a vital sign code is vital to a lot of towns that we have in big cities and in small, you know, suburbs, so like that. So they're trying to educate. They're not trying to say, here, push my agenda. It's all about, you know, having a good balance, because nobody wants an ugly town with signs. I mean, I drive by some of this stuff here. There's 5 pole signs in one 200-foot area. I mean, how did that happen? You know, unfortunately, I don't like it, and I've tried put stuff together. It's like, hey, can you guys all get together and put one nice big sign? But guess what? That one nice big sign would nothing we have would allow that. You know, or we used to, but now if we wanted to do that, it wouldn't allow that. So that's where we're trying to find a balance. And I know that, you know, all this stuff, I will send all these links for you guys, so we'll get together, Sal, and send them to you guys. Can research all this stuff and read all you want, because it's there, it's free, and there's tons of information.
So can you all meet and come up with a recommendation?
Yeah,
Or
that's the goal. I just, more than anything, since it was prevalent with the meeting right before this, I wanted to reopen the discussion and let you know this is going to be coming, so.
Since you're here tonight, I'm going to ask, has there been any studies about distracted driving with signs?
It was funny, I was just talking to Lady Arrow. Texas A&M did a huge study on, and I sent that, it's in that same link, but I'll send it to you as well. They did a huge study. I don't know how big a study it was. It's about 400-something pages of the analysis that they did on roads and streets of our LED message centers distracting and dangerous to drive, and the effects of all these studies, and they go into in depth how they did this. I mean, they worked with the transportation departments, all this safety analysis. I mean, it was a huge study, and it proved that they are not a distraction.
Okay.
They're no more of a distraction than your green sign for a highway distraction. But given that said, it's still important to, if you make something really small, people are going to focus on it longer. They focus on it longer. That's the biggest danger and stuff, is not having an adequate visual sign. I mean, if that sign, your logo, was 2 inches tall and I'm sitting here squinting and spending too much time and I'm doing something I shouldn't be, it's dangerous. Versus if I just glance and see it, I understand it. So that's the concept that we looked at. There's a balance between that. It doesn't have to be huge, but it has to be legible.
So are there distances then, like from intersections and all that meets that?
It's all in that analysis.
Okay.
It shows you, and even the lighting analysis, it shows you how to measure lighting, because you can't just shoot a lumen meter up against a sign and say, oh, it's too bright. There's a distance that you have to go by the square footage of that sign. So far back, you do a lumen meter, but you have to consider all the lighting around it and all this stuff versus where the code reads now.
Okay.
It just says 3,000. Well, you can't, you're not going to get you're not going to be able to measure it during the daylight anyway. So it's one of those things, it's not even, how could you even prove that? So there's a lot of important information that has these detailed studies and detailed research in it.
Good.
All good? Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other business?
The other thing, I just wanted to bring something up, and this may not be the place, but we talked a while back, and it's been a while but making the Madison and 47 intersection right in and right out. What do I need to do to lobby somebody to do that? Because I almost got killed on the way to work the other day.
There's a traffic committee that meets the first Friday of every month that makes those recommendations to City Council. In the past, when Total Access was being built, we did require a traffic study to determine if that was going to be necessary based on what they were increasing the traffic to be. That traffic study came back and said no, but with the caveat that the increase from their traffic that they are creating isn't going to create an issue. It didn't say if there was an existing issue there, kind of thing. It was just saying that the traffic coming from that new development wasn't going to say that. So if the commission as a group wanted to make a recommendation to be studied, that can be brought to the traffic committee, or an individual can make that recommendation. I mean, they look at everything from changing speed limit signs to adding a stop sign, but the first Friday every month they look at whatever has been requested that month.
Okay, I mean, I know it was probably, about 8:30, 8:45. I mean, it was drive time. I mean, this person came right down Madison across 4 lanes of traffic. If I had not been looking just all around my surroundings, my driver's side door would have been crushed. This woman just came right out. And it wasn't, an elderly person or, a disabled looking person or anything of that nature. I mean, or impaired otherwise. It was just, whoa. I mean, I don't know where they were going or what they were doing, but they were crossing lots of traffic lanes.
It's tough. They're crossing 6 lanes of
I-
traffic
I
to make a
remember-
right on 100 and go.
Yeah, I think Greg Scornia had the same kind of story. I just remember him talking about it once in a meeting a few years ago, and and I don't think it's anything directly attributed to the urgent care center or anything like that. It's just, my gosh, I mean, it really terrified me, and I thought we really need to take a look at that.
Zach, do you attend those meetings?
Not every month. It kind of depends on what's on the agenda.
Okay. So does somebody need to go to the meeting?
Yeah, I can bring it up with John Nilgis. He sets the agenda on that each month, and they're held over at the EOC. And I can put it on his radar for the next meeting to at least be a discussion topic.
That would be lovely. I mean, unless everybody else thinks I'm crazy,
No,
but
it's
I'm just concerned for safety, not just my own, but everybody's.
Good idea.
Yep.
So the first Friday of the month. At 8 o'clock.
Yeah, 9. I think they're moving back to 9.
Then okay.
But yeah, I'll pass along with John Nilgis, so.
Bill's dropping you a presentation on it. Traffic committee.
You gotta be kidding.
Any other business? If not, I'll entertain one last motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So passed. Thank you.
Isn't that awful?
Bill loves it.
Stuff is interesting.
Expect all the people from Stonecrest to the meeting.
Gotta love it.
Just lay him down.
Well, I know, but I